It was the year 1942, and they were in the middle of World War II. War has a way of rewriting the rules of world, turning ordinary men into soldiers, cities into ruins, and sometimes the most unexpected creatures into legends. And among those stories, half unbelievable, half beautifully human, stands the life of Wojtek, a Syrian brown bear who didn't just survive the chaos of World War II, but became a part of it. It begins not on a battlefield, but in the mountains of Iran in 1942, where a small bear cub, barely old enough to understand the world, loses everything before his life even began. His mother was killed by hunters, leaving him alone, vulnerable and already a casualty of human presence. After Anatole bought him, the bear was no longer just an animal wandering the wilderness, he becomes Wojtek, which is translated to joyful warrior, a name that sounds almost too fitting for what lies ahead. And at first, his life with the soldiers is strange, almost absurd in the context of war. Instead of surviving alone on the side or in a cage, he's being raised like one of them. Wojtek had problems swallowing, and thus he was fed condensed milk from an old vodka bottle, as Polish as it gets. He was also given fruit, marmalade, honey and syrup, and was often rewarded with beer, which became his favorite drink. He slept in tents, learned to trust hands that were otherwise trained to fight. But over the course of following months, he didn't just adapt, he integrated, growing rapidly, both in size and personality, becoming something between a mascot, companion, and a source of comfort for men. He wrestles with them, plays, follows them around like a oversized dog, and develops habits that feel almost human, like standing on his hind legs to greet people or mimicking the actions of the soldiers. He also later enjoyed smoking, or maybe rather eating cigarettes, as well as drinking coffee in the mornings. Wojtek had his own caregiver, assigned to look after him. He grew up while on campaign, and by the time of the Battle of Monte Cassino, he weighed 90 kilograms. As the war moves forward, so does Wojtek. Traveling with the unit across deserts and battlefronts, from Egypt, the Polish 2nd Corps was reassigned to fight alongside the British 8th Army. And here, the absurdity of the situation reaches a new level, because regulations don't exactly allow bears on military transports. So to get around this restriction, Wojtek was officially drafted into the Polish army. They officially enlisted him, giving him a rank, a serial number, and papers, turning him into Private Wojtek of the Polish army, not as a joke, but as a necessity, because war, as always, bends reality. And then comes the moment that cements his legend. The Battle of Monte Cassino, one of the most brutal and strategically critical battles of the entire Italian campaign, where Allied forces faced the seemingly unbreakable Gustav Line, a chain of heavily fortified positions stretching across the Italian peninsula, defended with precision by experienced German troops under the command of Albert Kesselring, who turned the mountainous terrain into a natural fortress, where every hill, every rock, and every ruined building became part of a deadly defensive network. It was a smoking wasteland full of mud, barbed wire, and constant artillery fire, where progress was measured not in miles, but in meters paid for with immense sacrifice. By the time the 2nd Polish Corps was ordered to take part in the final assault, the battlefield has already seen months of failed attempts, and the task ahead was clear but daunting: to capture the heights and finally break the Gustav Line. And it is right here that Wojtek's story reaches its most extraordinary chapter, because in the middle of a battle defined by chaos, the bear begins to mirror the actions of the men around him, stepping into a role no one could have predicted, yet one that fits seamlessly into the rhythm of war, as he starts carrying crates of artillery shells, heavy wooden boxes that often required more than one soldier to move, gripping them with surprising steadiness and transporting them from supply points to gun positions without panic, without confusion, moving back and forth through a landscape where explosions tore the ground apart and the air itself seemed alive with danger. And as the Polish forces finally succeeded in capturing the monastery on May 18, 1944, raising their flags over the ruins, soldiers were so struck by what Wojtek did that they turned it into a symbol of their unit: a bear carrying an artillery shell. After the war in Europe comes to an end on May 8, 1945, marking the final chapter of World War II on the continent, the Polish soldiers were lost, many of them unable to return to their homeland, now under Soviet influence. And in the middle of this uncertain transition stands Wojtek, an animal who has spent his entire life not in the wild, but among men sharing their journey through deserts, camps and battlefields, which makes his future just as complicated as theirs. Because there is no simple place for a bear shaped by war, you can't just take him home with you. But there was a solution. In 1947, he was transported to the Edinburgh Zoo in Scotland, a quiet and controlled environment far removed from the chaos of Monte Cassino, where he was given a permanent home and cared for. But even there, in peaceful post-war Britain, his story didn't just fade away, because part of his past stayed with him. And years after the war, former soldiers from the 2nd British Corps would come to visit him, traveling to Edinburgh and calling out to him in Polish, the same language he had heard during the war. And people who were there said his reactions felt different from a normal animal, because he would look up, walk closer, sometimes stand on his back legs and pay close attention. He recognized their voices, and in those moments, it didn't feel like a zoo anymore, but like a small connection to the past, showing that even after years and distance, the bond between him and the soldiers had never fully disappeared. And when the Wojtek dies in December 1963, at the age of 21, in that same enclosure at the Edinburgh Zoo, it doesn't feel like the quiet passing of just another animal, but the final moment of a story that had traveled across continents, through war, hardship and brotherhood, because this was not just a bear that lived in a zoo, but one who had once marched beside soldiers, shared their struggles and became part of something far greater than himself. And as his life comes to an end, what remains is not just memory, but a statue. In the heart of Edinburgh, not far from where he spent his final years, the statue is unveiled in Princess Street Gardens in 2015, showing Wojtek not just as a bear, but as he was remembered, standing alongside a soldier, carrying the weight of history with him, frozen in bronze, yet somehow still full of life. And he's not the only one, because another stands in Krakow, a place tied deeply to the soldiers he once belonged to, where he is again depicted carrying an artillery shell, the same act that made him a legend during the war, because some lives leave mark too deep to fade. He left behind a legacy that blurred the line between animal and soldier, and a reminder that even in the darkest times, bonds like that can exist and endure. This story was remembered with time, and to this day it's being told again and again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you found yourself enjoying the video and you kept watching up to this point, please be sure to like the video and subscribe, as it really does help me now because I'm trying to grow this thing, okay? Please subscribe so you don't miss out. I will see you in a while, goodbye.